Really? Oh, she's gonna get MTV to turn against us?
There's no
We don't
threatening.
have no MTV.
There's no threatening you guys.
There is none. We have no help anywhere.
Ozzy, did it bother you that they were saying this stuff?
And I was wanting to say to Sharon, too, she is the best advertisement ever for plastic surgery. I'm watching the monitor back there. She looks like a young Carmen Electra.
Yeah.
I think
like
she could be
super
her
hot.
own daughter at this
Yeah.
point.
In the brutal world of rock and roll, there's managers, and then there's, well, Sharon Osbourne. She's been called a lot of things: a visionary, a trailblazer, one of the sharpest minds in the music business. She's also been called a mean expletive, a title she seems to actually enjoy. For every rock star she's launched into the stratosphere, there's been another artist with a story to tell. A story about a deal that went south, a promise that got broken, or a career that was simply left in the dust. These weren't just disagreements, they were an all-out war, fought in the press, in the courts, or right on stage. So how did one woman become both the queen of rock and its most feared player? To figure that out, you have to look past the talk shows and the reality TV and dig into the career she unapologetically dismantled. Sharon Osbourne's story is so much more than just her saving her husband Ozzy from career oblivion. It's a masterclass in how to get and keep power. She didn't just join the boys' club of the music industry, she kicked down the door, plopped herself at the head of the table, and dared anyone to say something about it. She managed legends like Motorhead and the Smashing Pumpkins and created Ozzfest, a global phenomenon. You can't argue with her success, but her methods, they've left a trail of very public feuds and bitter legal fights that tell a very dark story. Today, we're skipping the highlight reel. We're opening the case files on Sharon Osbourne's most infamous battles to expose the takedowns that built her fearsome reputation. Before we get started, be sure to hit the bell notification icon and put all notifications on. I hear from a lot of my subscribers that they don't even get notifications when I post my videos. To really get the manager, you have to know where she came from. Sharon Rachel Arden wasn't just born into the music industry, she was practically forged in it. Her father, the infamous Don Arden, a manager that was so aggressive, they called him the Al Capone of pop. Sharon learned the business from the ground up, starting as a receptionist and eventually managing bands for him, including a little one called Black Sabbath. And that's where she met Ozzy. When Sabbath fired the frontman in 1979, everyone assumed his career was dead and buried. But Sharon saw something. She broke away from her powerful father, took Ozzy with her, and in the process kicked off a family feud that raged for decades. With her own dad actively trying to sabotage her, Sharon somehow engineered one of the greatest comebacks in music history. She built Ozzy's solo career from nothing, turning him into a global superstar who arguably became bigger than the band he got kicked out of. She did it with pure grit, smart marketing, and a business philosophy that boils down to one word: control. As she once said, "I had to know more than anybody else and be tougher than anybody else." That toughness made her a legend, but for some of the musicians who helped build that legend, it came at a pretty steep price, something they'd never forget. By the late 90s, Sharon's management empire was growing. In October of that year, she signed one of the biggest alternative bands in the world, the Smashing Pumpkins. The band, led by the famously complicated Billy Corgan, was looking for a firm hand. They thought they'd found it in Sharon. What they actually got was a partnership that imploded in less than 4 months, ending in a storm of public insults and lawsuits. It went bad pretty fast. By January of 2000, Sharon quit, and she didn't go quietly. She dropped a press release that was a masterclass in humiliation, stating she had to resign for medical reasons, adding, "Billy Corgan was making me sick." So why the meltdown? Well, a messy mix of creative clashes and simply just not liking each other. Sharon said she got tired of Corgan's sissy behavior and getting the silent treatment. She openly mocked him in the press, calling him a 6-foot baldy in a dress. The feud didn't just stop at insults. The band actually sued her for breach of contract to get their advance back. The bad blood even spilled over to the next generation, as in 2002, Sharon's daughter Kelly publicly insulted Corgan from a festival stage. This whole fiasco proved Sharon's aggressive style wasn't just for protecting Ozzy, it was her default setting. She was ready to go to war with any artist, no matter how famous, and she knew how to use the media as her personal blowtorch. More recently, though, they've smoothed things over, with Osbourne stating, "I managed him and we fell out. I'm too confrontational and pushy for Billy, but I still respect him as an artist for what he's achieved, and he's an alright guy." Sharon also revealed that she personally invited Corgan to perform at Black Sabbath's farewell show, and that the frontman accepted the invitation gracefully. Now, one of the weirdest chapters in her book of Feuds involves the face-painted rap duo from Detroit, Insane Clown Posse. The setting wasn't a boardroom, it was the chaos of the Howard Stern show back in 1999. You know, the era of the Stern show that everyone loved more than they do today. So ICP showed up on Stern's show and made some disparaging remarks about Sharon Osbourne's appearance and her reputation in the industry.
You don't even care.
Straight up. All the threatening remarks. She said, you guys are going to burn bridges by messing with me. What bridges do we take? What are they going to do? They're going to cut some of our... She's going to pull some strings and get us yanked off some radio stations? What stations?
You're not even on any station.
That's what I'm saying. Oh, she's going to get MTV to turn against us?
There's no
We don't have no MTV.
There's no threatening you guys.
There is none. We have no help anywhere.
Following their appearance, Sharon heard the interview and left a voicemail for Stern's show, wanting to come on and confront ICP. So the whole feud stems from the fact that Sharon was managing the group Coal Chamber, who toured on the same bill as ICP. Coal Chamber was actually booted from the tour by ICP over money due to poor ticket sales. Sharon claimed that Coal Chamber were going to be filing a lawsuit against ICP over breach of contract. So ICP ended up coming back on the Stern show the following day, and Sharon also appeared in the studio. During their on-air appearance together, things got pretty heated.
What's going on today? No. Alright, Sharon Osbourne, I guess, is a little upset at you guys for your comment you made yesterday.
Yeah.
Sharon Osbourne is the wife of Ozzy Osbourne, but more importantly, she is a big manager of rock bands.
She's a big woman.
And I was shocked yesterday when she called up and said she wants to get a hold of you two guys.
Did they hear the tape?
Did you hear the tape of Sharon? Let me play it for you so you can hear it. This is what Sharon said. She's sitting in the other room. She wants to talk to you.
Hi, it's Sharon Osbourne calling. So those two clowns want to slap my face, Casey. That's fine. I'll go in the studio. Let them try. Let me tell you something. I weigh 220 pounds. I'm bigger than the pair of them put together. I'll beat the shit out of the pair of the and my old man will come with me.
Oh, don't bring him.
So give us a call. Bye.
Yep. Her husband is Ozzy Osbourne, and he can put the devil on you.
That's right. He can curse you.
That's a true feeling.
Right. All right. Let's meet Sharon Osbourne. I was going to sit you guys on the couch with her, but I could see it could turn into violence.
Turn out.
She wouldn't fit
So I'm going to ask Sharon to. What was that?
She wouldn't fit out here with us anyway.
And I was just really upset because it's really demeaning for my reputation in this industry because I'm not a I'm a
that's the
ball
reputation
buster,
you got.
and I'm going to rip your balls
bitch.
off and I'm going to shove them in your mouth.
What?
Could I just, sorry, one thing about wrecking your career. I don't need to do that because you've done a very good job yourself. Your album stiffed. Your tour you had to cancel dates on your tour. You did 59%, according to Polestar, overall on your tour. You're over. You're yesterday's news. It wasn't for Howard. Your career would really be over.
You crumpet London. Listen to what I'm saying to you, all right?
I can tell that you were a Harvard graduate.
In the middle of all the yelling, a bet was made. Sharon bet Violent J $50,000 that ICP's next album, Bizarre Bizarre, wouldn't even sell 200,000 copies and that their label would drop them. It was a bold public prediction of failure. There was just one tiny problem. Sharon was dead wrong. The album went on to sell a combined 400,000 units, easily clearing the bet's benchmark. That meant that Sharon technically owed Insane Clown Posse 50 grand. Violent J has said in interviews that she lost the bet super hard and still owes them the money. They even told her that she could just donate $50,000 to a charity in their name, but she hasn't done so. The $50,000 bet is now a piece of music feud legend. For ICP and their fans, it's proof of her hypocrisy, and for Sharon, it was probably just another Tuesday, a little radio drama to pass the time, forgotten the second the show ended. But having one of the most powerful people in the music industry bet on your failure is a pretty big deal. In 2005, as part of the traveling Ozzfest tour, Both Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden were co-headlining. Also on the bill was Mudvayne and Rob Zombie. The tour ran from July 15th to August 20th. During Ozzfest that year, Iron Maiden frontman Bruce Dickinson was pretty open about what was bothering him, constantly slagging off Ozzy and the corporate nature of the tour during live shows and in the press. Ahead of the tour starting in the summer of 2005, Maiden finished a show in Sweden, which Dickinson told Kerrang, "I'd like to go to America and say, you're very good, but you're not as loud as 56,000 Vikings in a football stadium." In 2006, Dickinson gave his version of events of what led to the feud escalating, recalling, "Ozzfest is a corporate rock event in which they sell the front 10 to 12 rows to corporate seats and not to kids. Most of the bands pay a lot of money to be on Ozzfest. They get paid next to nothing. The whole way it's being portrayed as being some kind of altruistic holiday for all the bands is absolute nonsense. It's complete bull." According to Sharon, Dickinson was constantly complaining backstage, saying, and I quote, "We don't need a teleprompter. We don't need a reality show to be legit." Sharon apparently took this as a thinly veiled insult against her husband and her family. It all culminated with the tour's final stop in California. Attendees reportedly told news outlets that ahead of Iron Maiden taking the stage, that night a voice was chanting "Ozzy, Ozzy, Ozzy," and it could be heard through the venue's public address system. The same night, Iron Maiden's power was cut several times during their set, and several songs during Iron Maiden's performance where they would be pelted with eggs, ice, bottle caps, and lighters. Obviously angered, Dickinson told the audience members to break the arms of those throwing the objects at the band. During the group's performance, it was reported that Dickinson slammed the festival organizers for cutting the group's power and slammed Ozzy once again. The Orange County Register claimed that during the band's performance of The Trooper, that typically had Dickinson waving the British flag, towards the end of the song, a man wearing an American flag with the words "Don't F with Ozzy" appeared on stage, but was removed by Iron Maiden's entourage. It was initially reported in the press that one of the bands on Ozzfest that year, Bury Your Dead, were responsible for hurling objects at Iron Maiden. They got so bad that the band received death threats from angry Maiden fans, and they also had to issue a statement claiming they were not involved. Sharon later admitted trying to sabotage Maiden's performance, including taking responsibility for cutting their power and hiring friends of hers who had turned out to be hospital staff that she met while undergoing cancer treatment to throw eggs on stage. Following Maiden's set that night, Sharon took to the stage to slam Iron Maiden's behavior on tour, with some in the audience chanting Maiden's name during her rant to show their support.
Known those guys since the 80s, and we offered them the show. They were getting paid $185,000 a night. We treated them, everything they wanted they got.
$185,000 a night?
Yeah.
Wow, that's
generous. They would
generous.
go on stage, and Bruce Dickinson each night would slag Ozzy.
Yes.
Say really disrespectful things about
Ozzy?
About Ozzy, and Ozzy's the schmuck that's paying him. So I'm thinking to myself, let it go on. Just carry on, you little...
Ozzy, did it bother you that they were saying this stuff?
I didn't listen. I didn't want to know because I'm getting myself prepped for my show, you know.
I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him.
Wow.
So on the last
I'm glad you
night,
didn't tell Ozzy.
No.
Thank God you protect him.
So
what does he need that crap
He
for?
doesn't need it. So on the last night in LA, where they think, oh, they're in LA, man, they're cool, they're really cool. I got 200 Hispanic kids, loaded them with eggs. They had peanut butter. They pelted the out of them.
Out of Iron Maiden.
Yes, and then I went on stage and I said, look, don't with us. Don't be disrespectful.
Maybe one of the most ruthless and most telling fights that Sharon waged was against two of Ozzy's solo musicians, bassist Bob Daisley and drummer Lee Kerslake. These guys were foundational. They played on the first two iconic albums, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. And Daisley even co-wrote anthems like Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley. They thought they were in the band, but Sharon insisted it was always just Ozzy, a solo act. That disagreement led to decades of war. Daisley and Kerslake were fired before Diary of a Madman was even released, and their names and photos were completely scrubbed from the album. They ended up suing the Osbournes multiple times for unpaid royalties, and while the lawsuits didn't end up going their way, the fight hit a shocking new low in 2002. In what many see as a purely vindictive move, Sharon had the original bass and drum tracks on both Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman completely re-recorded for the reissues. The new parts were played by Mike Borden, drummer for Faith No More, and Metallica bassist Robert Trujillo. With that one move, Daisley and Kerslake were basically erased from two of the most important albums in metal history. Their iconic performances were, well, just gone. It was a breathtaking display of power, a clear message to anyone who dared to challenge the Osbournes. But the fan backlash was huge, and eventually the original recordings were restored in 2011, but the damage was done. Daisley called the act pathetic and an insult to the music and the fans. This wasn't just business. Sharon's way of showing the world her control over Ozzy's legacy was absolute, and she was willing to literally rewrite history to prove it. Daisley, however, ended up returning for Ozzy's solo albums all the way to 1991's No More Tears. It gets a little complicated, but when Daisley first returned for Bark at the Moon, he and drummer Lee Kerslake were involved in a lawsuit against Don Arden, Sharon's father, and Jet Records over unpaid royalties and missing credits from the first two albums. It was at that time Sharon and Ozzy were estranged from Arden and were actually supporting Daisley and Kerslake in their legal battle. This alignment of interest made it practical for Daisley to work with Ozzy again. But Sharon acquired the rights to Ozzy's early solo catalog, including Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, in 1983 after buying them from Don Arden and Jet Records. Now, there was also a third member of Ozzy's solo career, guitarist Jakey Lee. In 1982, this phenomenal young guitarist landed the gig of a lifetime, replacing the legendary Randy Rhoads in Ozzy's band. His style was exactly what Ozzy needed. Lee's first album was 1983's Bark at the Moon, which eventually went triple platinum. But here's the problem. Lee actually co-wrote a huge chunk of the music on that record, and he walked into the studio with riffs and melodies and a verbal promise that he'd be credited and paid for his work. But according to Lee, that promise vanished the second his work was done. He remembers being in the studio with no lawyer or manager of his own and being handed a contract after his last guitar track was recorded. The contract was really a slap in the face. It said that Ozzy was the sole songwriter for the whole album and that Lee had zero claim to any writing or publishing, and the kicker, that he was forbidden from ever talking about it publicly. When Lee confronted Sharon about it, he claims her response was chillingly simple: no, it isn't. The ultimatum was pretty simple: sign it, or they'd put him on a plane home, wipe his guitar parts, get someone else to re-record them, and leave him to fight a lawsuit that he couldn't afford. He signed, and for the next album, The Ultimate Sin, Lee refused to play a single note until he had a contract guaranteeing his credit. He got it, but it didn't last much longer, and he was soon fired. But in a strange twist, Lee wasn't told by Sharon or even Ozzy he was out of the band, but he heard it from his roommate. He recalled being invited to dinner one night by Sharon, and at that dinner, Sharon used language like "someday when you have your own band" and so forth. When he returned home, Lee was told by his roommate that there was news spreading around the clubs in LA that he had been fired. Lee was dumbfounded, having just come from dinner with Sharon, who made no mention of it. When Lee called Sharon, she verified this claim that he was in fact fired. Lee continued to play music, and almost 2 decades after being fired, he was offered the chance to rejoin Ozzy around 2010 when Zakk Wylde left. But Lee just had one condition. He wanted his writing credit for Bark at the Moon, no royalties or back pay, he just wanted credit. He claimed Sharon told him she'd call him back the next day, but that call never came. This was a move that would become a classic Osbourne play. Get the creative work first, then set the terms, and if you played by their rules, you could be a star. If you didn't, there was a door. I will say that Lee has confirmed that he will be attending Black Sabbath's upcoming final show, and it wasn't Sharon or Ozzy who actually reached out to him, but rather the musical director of the show, Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine. A pattern is starting to show, right? It's built on control, confrontation, and a scorched earth approach to business. What do you guys think? Is this what it takes to win in a cutthroat industry, or something more? Let me know in the comment section below, and as we keep digging, the stories, of course, only get weirder.